You are listening to PastThink.com audiobook. Please like and subscribe, thank you. Chapter 44. Yang Xiong while drunk curses his wife, Shirshio plans the killing of the monk Hai. Old Pan spoke to Shirshio, "Uncle, do not go. I understand your ideas. After an absence of 2 days you return, and find the butchery closed, and things cleared out, so you thought the business was finished. Even if the business was a failure you could still stay at our home. It is just 2 years since my daughter's first husband, Wang, died, and she wished to have a memorial service conducted by monks. Therefore we closed the butchery and monks will come from the Bowen Monastery tomorrow. We would like you to take charge of the arrangements made. I am too old and would be continually falling asleep in the night." "In that case," said Shirshio, "I will stay here for some time. After this I must ask you, uncle, not to have any suspicions of what we do here," said Old Pan. Early the next day the monk's assistant arrived to arrange the room for prayers. He erected an altar, arranged the drums, cymbals, gongs, and musical stone, and set out the lamps and incense. He then went into the kitchen to prepare the feast. When Yang Xiong came he told Shirshio that he was on duty, and would not be back that night. He must therefore not wait for him. He left all the matters in his hands. "You need not worry about anything," said Shirshio. "I will look after everything." Yang Xiong then departed and Shirshio took charge. Shortly afterwards the door curtain was raised, and a young monk entered who gave Shirshio a Buddhist salutation. Shirshio also saluted, and asked the monk to be seated. He then called out to Old Pan in the next room, "Father-in-law, the monk has arrived." Old Pan came in, and the monk spoke to him, "My adopted father, why have you not been to our temple for such a long time?" "We have opened a new butchery here so that I have had very little spare time," said Old Pan. "This is the anniversary of the death of Wang and I have not sent you any presents, but I hope that you will accept this vermicelli, and some dates I have had prepared for you," said the monk. "Why do you spend so much money?" "How unnecessary," said Old Pan. He asked Shirshio to take them, and the latter carried the tray with the presents into the next room. Shirshio soon returned with tea which he offered to the monk. Just then Madame Yang, Pan Qiaoyun, the clever cloud, came down the staircase into the room. She was plainly dressed, and had no rouge on her face. She spoke to Shirshio, "Who has sent the presents?" "They are from a monk who called your father his adopted father," said Shirshio. Pan Qiaoyun laughed and said, "I know. They are from the monk Pei Rahai, the monk whose religious name is Master Hai. He is a monastery tutor and a very honest man. He is the son of old Pei of the silk goods shop, and is now at the Bowen Monastery. He is 2 years my senior, and therefore I can address him as elder brother. Uncle, you can listen to his recital of the prayers this evening, as he has a very good tone." "Is that so?" said Shirshio. In listening to her, however, he suspected she had some hidden desire. Shirshio did not follow her, but looked on through the bamboo curtain. He saw that the monk gave her a very elaborate salute. The woman asked the monk, "Why did you spend so much money for the presents?" "Sister, the presents are so small that they are not worth mentioning," replied the monk. "As you have become a monk, how can we accept your presents?" said the woman. "At our monastery we have just begun building a prayer hall for the dead. We should like you to honor us with a visit to see it. I hope that your husband will raise no objections to that." "I do not think he will mind that," said the woman. "When my mother was dying I made a vow that I would offer prayers to those who have died in childbirth, and sooner or later I will trouble you to fulfill my vow for me in your temple." "That's my business, whatever you order me I will do as you desire," said the monk. "Sometime I will ask you to recite the prayers for my late mother's benefit," she said. Just then a maidservant entered with tea. The woman took the cup, wiped it clean with her sleeve, and then offered it to the monk. The monk took the cup, but at the same time he gazed amorously into her eyes. The woman returned his gaze with a smile. Neither of them suspected that their exchange of flirtation was being closely watched by Shirshio behind the bamboo curtain. He now began to understand the woman a little better. He thought, how deceptive are appearances. She always spoke to me in a very free and open manner, but I thought it was because I was a sworn brother of her husband. Now I think she cannot have been a very virtuous woman. She is now, however, in my hands, and I must deal with the matter for Yang Xiong. He raised the curtain and entered the room. The monk immediately put down his cup of tea and said, "Brother, please be seated." The woman interposed, "This is the sworn brother of my husband." The monk had suspicions at once and hurriedly inquired, "Brother, may I ask where you are from, and also your name?" "Me? My name is Shirshio. I am from Nanjing. I help other people to revenge their wrongs and therefore they call me the desperado. I am, however, only a stupid fellow, and if I intrude in your affairs I hope that you will not resent it." "Never mind. Never mind," said the monk hurriedly. "I am just now going to summon the monks to come and commence the service." He left the room at once. That fickle woman called after him, "You must soon come back." She then went into the inner room. Shirshio stood near the door with bowed head in deep thought. It was not long before the monks arrived, lit the candles, and began to burn incense. They began their intoning of the prayers accompanied by drum beating, cymbals, etc., when Shirshio and Old Pan had supplied them with tea and hot soup. Soon Pan Xiaoyun entered, lit her incense, and offered her prayers, swaying seductively as she performed the rituals. This aroused Hai the tutor, and her monk increased the sound of his intoning. The other monks were sent reeling, and nudged each other, as they witnessed this display of the two lovers. When the service was over, the monks were asked to dine in the next room. Hai maneuvered his way to the rear of the monks, and turning his head to the woman he laughed. The woman smiled, but placed her hand over her mouth as though to avoid an explosion of laughter. They again exchanged lovers' glances and clearly made known their passions. Shirshio had noticed all this, and was more upset. The monks in the other room had all sat down, and partook of the vegetarian food. Old Pan wished them all a good time, and asking to be excused he withdrew to go to sleep. After the meal the monks strolled about the rooms. Shirshio said he had stomach ache, and begged to be excused. He thereupon lay down on a bench, and pretended to go to sleep. The woman now felt her passions rising, so to divert her own thoughts she busied herself in making tea, and serving it to the monks. The service went on until about 1 a.m., when most of the monks were drowsy, but Hai still continued reading the prayers with great vigor. Pan Xiaoyun was behind a screen, and noticing this she allowed her passions to arise. She called a maidservant and sent her to summon Hai to come to her. The young monk continued his intoning as before but slowly made his way towards the screen. When near Xiaoyun she seized his sleeve and said, "You must come here and collect the fees, and do not forget to speak to my father about the vows I made when mother died." "I will not forget," said the monk. "I will tell him that you wish to redeem your vows as soon as possible." "What about your uncle, is he not an awkward man?" Xiaoyun shook her head and said, "You take no notice of him. He is not a blood relation of ours." "In that case I shall feel more at ease." So saying he clasped the woman's hand under cover of his sleeve, and she moved the curtain to cover the act also. He laughed, returned to his place, and continued intoning the prayers as before. They did not realize that all this had been clearly seen by Shirshio, who was pretending to be asleep on the bench. About 4 a.m. the service was finished, and the monks departed. Xiaoyun went upstairs to sleep. Shirshio thought, "My adopted brother, Yang Xiong, is a great hero, and it is a great pity that he married a loose woman of this kind." He could not avoid being angry at the position of affairs. The next day Yang Xiong returned, but Shirshio did not speak about the matter. As soon as he had had his meal, Yang Xiong however left again. Shirshio saw the young monk arrive, but this time he was dressed in his best clothes. Xiaoyun hurried downstairs, received him, and ordered tea to be brought. She said, "I am afraid that we put you to a lot of trouble last night, but we have not repaid you yet." That was only a very small affair. Last night we talked about your vows, and now we are reading prayers at our temple. You could just come to our temple and get a written statement. That would be all right. She agreed and sent a girl servant to ask old Pan to come and discuss the matter. When he arrived, he saluted the young monk and apologized for retiring so early the previous night, but he had been very tired. Uncle Shirshio fell sick and also retired early so that there was no one to look after you. I am sorry. Do not be so courteous, said the monk. Xiao Yun now spoke. I want to redeem the vow I made when my mother died. Our friend tells me that tomorrow there will be a service at the monastery temple, and we might avail ourselves of the opportunity and attend to pray. Very well, said old Pan. But I am afraid that we might be busy at the butchery tomorrow, and there will be nobody there to attend the matters. You can ask Shirshio to look after the business, she said. Just so, said old Pan. We can go to the temple tomorrow. Xiao Yun then got the money for the services rendered by the monks, and handed it to the young monk. After returning suitable thanks, he left for the temple. Yang Xiong again returned home, and after supper old Pan told Yang Xiong of the proposed visit to the temple the following day. Yang Xiong asked his wife why she did not speak to him herself, to which the woman replied that she was afraid that he might refuse her. The next day a sedan chair was obtained for Xiao Yun, and she set off about 11 a.m. accompanied by old Pan and the girl servant Inger, carrying the candles and incense. The young monk Hai was waiting for them at the monastery gate, and he was much pleased to see them. Xiao Yun emerged from the chair and thanked the monk for meeting them. The monk said, "The monks have been praying in the temple since early this morning, and we have awaited your arrival." He led the way into the hall, where there were still about 10 monks reading the scriptures. Xiao Yun saluted and gave 3 kowtows to the Buddha. After burning incense and paper, the monks were asked to go and get their meal, and Hai requested Xiao Yun and old Pan to go to his private apartments for tea. Tea was duly served in silver cups with red saucers. When tea was finished, Hai asked them to go into the adjoining room. It was a very small room with a black lacquer couch and many pictures on the walls. On a small table was a vase with burning incense. Old Pan and Xiao Yun took their seats on the couch with the monk facing them. "What a nice place you have," said Xiao Yun, "and how quiet and secluded." "Do not joke about my humble bear quarters," said the monk. "It is a mere barracks compared to your honorable mansion." Old Pan said, "We have given you much trouble, we will now depart. All the food has been provided because of your visit, why do you depart without taking any?" He then ordered the servant to bring in the food, and this was soon done. The meal was of the best food. "Why do you prepare food for us? We give you a lot of trouble," remarked Xiao Yun to the monk. "I am afraid the meal does not by any means equal my respects and feelings for you," he replied. He then pressed old Pan to try the wine provided. "What a fine taste," said old Pan. "Yes, the brewing method I learned from a donor of our temple, and used quite 5 pickles of rice in making it. I will send a bottle of it to your house tomorrow, as you like the flavor." "That is quite unnecessary," said old Pan. The servants kept filling old Pan's cup with wine, and the girl servant who was sitting with them also drank several cups of wine. Old Pan wanted to summon the sedan chair carriers also to drink of the wine, but Hai the tutor said that it was unnecessary as they had already had some with their food outside. In fact, the monk had prepared this strong wine especially for old Pan in order to further his own plans. Very soon old Pan was drunk, and the monk suggested that he should now have a sleep. He summoned the servants to take old Pan into another room to sleep on the bed there. Xiao Yun had also drunk some wine, and was feeling rather confused. She asked, "What was the use in getting me merely to drink the wine?" The monk whispered, "Because I love you. Will you now come into another room to have a look at Buddha's tooth?" "Very well, I should like to see it," she replied. They went upstairs to a room which was the monk's private apartment, and was nicely furnished. She was much pleased and said, "What a nice chamber, and how clean." "Yes, but it is short of the adornment of a woman. She laughed. Then why don't you get one? Where is the donor who would present me with one? But you asked me to come here to see Buddha's tooth. Well, first send away your girl servant, and then I will show it to you. She told the girl to go downstairs and see whether old Pan had awakened. The girl went, and the monk closed the door after her. Xiao Yun was now alone with him, and she laughed. Why do you close the door? I am in love with you, and have waited for 2 years for this opportunity. I hope that we shall now complete our desires. He embraced her. You must not forget that my husband would be annoyed. You must not try to cheat me. If he finds out, he will never forgive you. He knelt down and said, I hope that you will take pity on me. You are so skillful in dealing with me, but I like to give you big blows upon your face with my hand. He laughed. You would enjoy beating me. He then picked her up and carried her to the bed, where he undressed her and had his heart's desire. Thus they enjoyed themselves for a long time, after which the monk, embracing her, said, If I die now, I shall have no regrets. But today our pleasure has been brief, and I should like to arrange a whole night's assignation. You must not worry about that. I have a plan. 20 days out of 1 month my husband is on duty at the prison. I will bribe my girl servant, and she will wait outside the back door. A table will be placed there with incense, and you can easily get in that way. You must arrange for a wandering monk to come at daybreak, and beat a wooden fish at our back door, and then you can depart in due time. You can, of course, bribe him to keep a lookout to see that no one is coming. He was much pleased at this proposal and said, Admirable. That will do. There is a wandering monk here, named Hu, and I will arrange with him to do so. I cannot stay here much longer. I am afraid that somebody will suspect me. I must go at once. She quickly combed her hair, rouged her face again, opened the door, and went downstairs. She told the girl servant to see if old Pan was now ready, and she went into the original room. The chair-bearers were waiting at the gate. The young monk had followed Xiao Yun, and now conducted her to the gate. She entered her chair, and with old Pan, and the servant girl returned home. Master Hai soon arranged matters with the wandering monk named Hu, who lived at a small temple close by. His duty at the temple was to arise before sunrise, and beat the wooden fish to summon all the monks to prayers. The next day the wandering monk went to old Pan's house, and met the girl servant, who asked him, Why do you come to the back door? The monk commenced to recite the prayers. Xiao Yun inside heard this, and coming out said, Are you not the monk who announces the dawn? Yes, I do that every day. You will also burn some incense to Buddha in the evening. She was much pleased at this, and sent the girl servant upstairs to get a string of cash for the monk. As soon as the girl had gone, the monk spoke, I am the confidant of the monk Hai, who asked me to come here and keep a lookout. I understand, she said, you must come again this evening and have another look. If there is an incense table here, you can report to him, and he can visit me. The monk nodded his head as the girl just then returned and handed him the money. He went his way. Xiao Yun went upstairs, and there told the girl servant her plan, and gave her some money. That evening Yang Xiong left for his duty in the prison. The girl servant duly placed the incense table near the back door, and shortly afterwards a man wearing a hat, contrary to clerical custom, entered the gate, and the girl asked who he was, but the man did not reply, but continued on his way. Xiao Yun, who was near, however, took the cap from the man's head, and seeing then the shining skull of the monk, she exclaimed, What an excellent disguise! They embraced and went upstairs. The servant took the incense table inside and closed the door. The lovers passed a happy night together. The next morning they were both aroused by the sound of the wooden fish being beaten. Hai the tutor quickly dressed and said, I must go now, but I will come again this evening. From that day the monk visited Xiao Yun in this way every time that the husband was away from home. Old Pan was always asleep, and they had to hoodwink only Shirshio. This affair went on for more than a month. Now Shirshio was attending to the affairs of the butchery, and although he had some suspicion about the conduct of Qiaoyun, he had not seen anything further to convince himself. He was a very early riser, and every day he heard the wandering monk strike the wooden fish at daybreak. But Shirshio, hearing the sound, knew that it meant something. On the 15th day of the 11th month, Shirshio was awake very early, and he listened to the beating of the wooden fish, and then also heard the traveling monk say, "Buddha saves everyone from trouble and difficulties." Shirshio got up, and peeping through a crack in the door, he saw a man wearing a cap go out by the back door, and depart with the wandering monk. A short time afterwards he saw the girl servant close the back door. He ejaculated, "Why does my adopted brother tolerate such a woman? She is evidently deceiving him, and does some underhand affair." He went about his business in the abattoir as usual, and then in the afternoon went into the town to collect some accounts, but instead went to the yamen to see Yang Xiong. On the way he saw him, who asked him, "Where are you going?" "I came to collect accounts," said Shirshio, "and then thought of finding you. I have always been very busy, but now we can have a little wine together if you will come with me," said Yang Xiong. He then took Shirshio to a wine shop near at hand, where they sat down in a quiet corner, and Yang Xiong ordered wine and food. They drank 3 cups of wine, and then Yang Xiong noticed that Shirshio was hanging his head down as though lost in thought. Yang Xiong was a quick-tempered man. "I see that you have been upset by something. Is there someone at our home who has said anything against you?" "There was nothing of that kind at our home," said Shirshio. "Elder brother, you have always treated me well as your own brother, but there is something I do not dare to speak to you about." "Why do you talk, my younger brother, in this unusual way today? Whatever is in your mind you may tell me." "Elder brother, you go to your office every day, so that you cannot know what is happening at home. Your wife is not a good woman, but although I have known this for some time, I did not dare to tell you before this. But today all has been made quite clear, so that I can tell you the truth. I hope you will excuse my straightforwardness." "I have no eye at my back," said Yang Xiong, "so please tell me who the man is." "Some days ago, when you had Buddhist prayers at your house, I noticed that the monk Hai was exchanging loving glances with your wife. 3 days afterwards she and old Pan went to the temple to fulfill a vow, and upon their return I noticed that they were both drunk. Nowadays I have heard a monk striking a wooden fish in the alley behind your house. As I thought it strange, so today I got up very early, and saw the monk Hai leave your house wearing an ordinary cap. What do you want this woman for?" Yang Xiong was very angry at this, and said, "How dare that bitch do this?" "Please do not lose your temper," said Shirshio. "You must not mention this matter today, and tomorrow you must tell your people that you are going to the office. Then you can return about midnight, and knock at the door of your house. The monk will try to leave by the back door. I will wait there, and seize him and hand him over to you." "A good idea," said Yang Xiong, "I will do as you say." After finishing their wine they separated. Yang Xiong spent the afternoon with some colleagues practicing with fencing sticks, and he drank so much wine that he was drunk by evening. When he returned home his wife undressed him, and assisted him to bed. When Yang Xiong saw his wife doing this he remembered what he had heard about her. There is an old saying, when drunk, people talk of affairs. Pointing at his wife he now said, "You deceiver. I shall kill you some day or other." She was startled, but did not reply. She waited upon him, and heard his rambling remarks, "You filthy whore. You deserve to be killed. I cannot spare your life." She dare not take any notice of this, and waited until he fell asleep. About 5 a.m. Yang Xiong awoke out of his drunken sleep, and asked for water, which his wife got for him. He asked her, "Wife, why did you not undress?" "I saw that you were drunk, and being afraid that you might vomit I did not undress to sleep." "What did I say in my drunkenness?" asked Yang Xiong. "Previously you have always been quiet when drunk, but last night you seemed to be cross about something." "For quite a few days I have not drunk with Shirshio, so I want you to treat him to some wine." She did not reply to this, but sat down on a couch and cried bitterly. Wife, I came home drunk last evening, and yet I did not provoke you. What are you troubled about? She did not reply to this, but only put her hands over her eyes. He again asked the question without getting a reply, and she now pretended to cry. He thereupon took hold of her, and carried her to his bed, and repeated his question. Still crying, she now answered, when my parents married me to the clerk Wang, they thought that I was settled for life, but who would have expected that in midlife he would die, and leave me a widow? When I met you, and saw that you were a great hero, I married you, but I never expected that you could not protect me. You talk in a strange manner. Who has deceived you, and where did I not protect you? I would not say just now, but I am afraid that you have been cheated by him, and if I told you, you would only be angry. You can say just what you have to say. Then if I tell you, you must keep your temper. When you first brought Shirshio here, he had good manners, but since then he has shown his true habits. Now when you stay away from home, he would approach me saying, your husband will not return tonight, so that you will find it very dull and cold by yourself. But I gave him no notice, although he said that every day. But what is more important is this. Yesterday morning I was washing my face in the kitchen, and he entered by the back door. Seeing no one else about, he came up and fondled my breasts with his hand. I pushed him away, but was afraid to call out, as I did not want our neighbors to hear, as that would have made them talk about your disgrace. I intended to tell you when you returned, but alas, you were too drunk to understand. I detest that man, and yet you ask about his condition. Yang Xiong was very angry at this, and said, in drawing a tiger, you show its skin, but not its bones. In knowing man, you may know his face, but not his heart. He told me that it was the young monk Hai who was doing this, but it was evidently he himself, who has been guilty. He is no longer my sworn brother, and tomorrow he shall get out. In the morning Yang Xiong went downstairs, and spoke to old Pan, that butchery business is finished. I want you to close the business, and take down all the fittings and furniture at once. This was done. That morning when Shirshio came to open the abattoir, he found that all the tools, etc. had been removed. But he was very understanding, and soon guessed what had happened. He laughed, so, this is the way. Yang Xiong has let the cat out of the bag while drunk. He has told his wife what I said, and in order to protect herself, she has manufactured some slander about me, and got her husband to close the business. If I tried to defend myself, it would lead to other people knowing of the trouble, and so my friend Yang Xiong would lose face. I will retreat one step and think of some other plan of clearing myself. So he went inside the abattoir, and packed up his things. Yang Xiong was afraid that Shirshio was too ashamed to come to see him, so he went off to his office. Shirshio took his sword and baggage to old Pan's house and said, I have given you much inconvenience, and as my sworn brother has now closed the business, I will go. I have settled the accounts, and you will find everything in order. Should there be some slight mistakes in the accounts, then may heaven punish me for it. As Yang Xiong had told old Pan to close the business, the latter could not do anything, and so Shirshio departed. He soon found an inn in the town where he engaged a room. There he meditated, I am an intimate friend of Yang Xiong, and if I do not make the whole affair clear, it would ruin his life. Just now he is hoodwinked by his wife, and I am not going to raise any objection. Eventually, however, I must make the matter clear to him. In the meantime, I will find out when he is on duty, and then watch what goes on at his home during the night. After staying in the inn for 2 days, he made inquiries at Yang Xiong's neighborhood. In the evening he saw a messenger from the jail came to take Yang's beddings, so he concluded that Yang Xiong would sleep at the jail that night. He went to the inn and slept until about 3 a.m., when he got up, took his sword, quietly slipped out of the inn, and going to the alley at the back of Yang Xiong's house, he hid there in a dark spot. About 4 a.m. he saw the wandering monk arrive, and begin looking around. Shirshio crept up behind the monk, and seizing hold of him placed the blade of his sword across the back of the monk's neck. He said, keep quiet, or I will kill you. Speak the truth. Why does Monk Hai tell you to come here and do this? Kind sir, spare my life and I will tell you the truth. Be quick then. I will not kill you. The monk said, the monk Hai comes here every night to stay with Yang Xiong's wife. I come in the evening to report whether there is an incense table outside, and if so he enters the house. At 5 a.m. I come and beat the wooden fish to awaken him to leave the house. Where is he now? Asked Shirshio. He is asleep in the house. If I strike the wooden fish he will come out. Well, let us change clothes, said Shirshio. The monk took off his clothes, and then Shirshio killed him on the spot. Shirshio put on the monk's robes, and then struck the wooden fish. Monk Hai in bed heard the sound, dressed and quickly left the house. As Shirshio was still beating the wooden fish, the monk Hai spoke in a low voice, that is enough. I am here. Shirshio took no notice of this, but coming up to the monk Hai, he pushed the monk to the ground. Shirshio held the monk down and exclaimed, hold your tongue. If you make a noise I will kill you. I am going to take away your gown. The monk now recognized Shirshio, and was afraid. He let Shirshio take all his clothes so that he was soon stark naked. Then Shirshio took his sword and killed him. He then placed the sword in the hand of the first monk he had killed, wrapped up the dead men's clothes, and made off to his inn. He very quietly opened the door, and shut it after him, and went to sleep without being seen by anyone. That morning a hawker of cakes and congee happened to pass the dead bodies, and fell over them in the dark. The small boy who accompanied him called out, here is a drunken monk. The hawker got up, and found his hands covered with blood, and was much upset. He made such a noise that the neighbors came out with lights, and disclosed the 2 dead bodies lying in blood. They seized the hawker, and took him to the yamen. Misfortune dropped from heaven, and fell on this poor man.